the number of financial advisors has been essentially cut in half.
We need to bring more diversity in, not only to who is giving financial advice or giving money education.
How did it feel to give up that personal advice component?
It was a mixed bag of emotions, if I'm truly honest.
I'm not going to quote the statistics. If you looked at the stats on sort of family discord, outside of, interpersonal stuff, finance is actually one of the biggest reasons why people break up.
The majority of people do not want to have conversations with their partner about money.
Hi everyone, this is your host, Dr. B here. Welcome to another installment of the Investing for Doctors podcast. And today I've got Jessica Brady with me. Jess.
Hello.
Hi. Before we start in, give us a quick introduction about yourself.
Sure. Well, I'm not a doctor. I am a financial advisor. So I've been in financial services for 18 years. In 2017, I co-founded an award-winning financial advice business. I sold that business to my co-founder and I did something a little bit radical for the financial advice world. Last year, I launched online money programs. Basically, I was, really sick of having to turn people away because they didn't have enough money to learn about money. And so I thought, well, I'm teaching my clients the same thing over and over again. What if I actually turned this into an online program where people can come, they can be part of a community, they can learn through live sessions with me, but they can also listen to the pre-recorded videos that I've made and the downloads so that they can actually build their own plan for a fraction of the price that it is to, say, engage with me in a one-on-one sense. And then, earlier this year, I launched the Financially Fierce podcast. So by not doing one-on-one client work, whilst I am still a fully licensed financial advisor, it's really been able to help me create capacity to help all of those, 80% of Australians who have never engaged or cannot afford to engage with financial advisors.
So I think in one of our previous podcasts with Roger, we talked about the changing landscape of financial advice and how the number of financial advisors has been essentially cut in half. And there's also a lot of people where the typical financial advice business doesn't quite fit them individually because they're too early in their career or they may not have enough assets to warrant a couple of $1,000s in personal advice fees. Is this where you step in?
Yeah, absolutely. And to the point that you were making before, it also can be because people don't necessarily have the complexity yet to go and seek financial advice. You might have talked about this on the prior podcast. The research is really alarming in terms of the year-on-year increase to advice fees. And so by virtue of the fact that it's gone up something like 40% in the last 3 years, I think the research has said that the average 1 year financial advice fee in Australia is something like $8,100. You need to have a fair bit of complexity or a fair bit of wealth to be able to make that return on investment call to say, to say that that's the right thing. And so by being able to have my online money programs through the podcast, and I do a limited amount of 1 hour general advice clarity call. So normally someone's got, a conundrum, a question, and they just want an expert to do a bit of a 360 on it. And so to be able to do that for 1 hour and to give them the confidence that you're on the right track, or, hey, maybe there's something that you haven't thought about yet, or here's the pros and cons of, whatever strategy option you're thinking about going with, so that they can go eyes wide open, I think is something that is so needed in our world. And I don't know of any other financial advisors in Australia that are doing it.
I don't think so. I think you're, pardon me for saying this, you're a bit of an oddball in the financial advice industry.
You could have chosen many other words, but sure, we'll take oddball. I am.
Likewise myself, I'm a bit of an oddball in medicine.
I'm a maverick. Yeah. And look, to be really honest, and I was saying this to you before we clicked go, I emceed an awards night on Saturday night. And as my sort of opening, I said to everyone, I'm a financial advisor. And the whole room erupted in laughter. And sure, maybe a financial advisor isn't who you'd expect to MC an event.
Yes.
But I'm also a female and I'm not 55, which I think is about the average age of an advisor. And so...
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
It's old. Yeah. Bless them. Predominantly old white wealthy men giving advice to old white wealthy men. And I have no issue with either of those cohort of people within our community. Some of my best leaders, mentors, friends fit within that camp. But what I do want to advocate for is the fact that we must, as a sector, look like the society and the community that we're here to solve.
Be representative.
Exactly. And we are absolutely not. I think it's between 20 and 30% of financial advisors today in Australia are women.
Yeah.
Many of them do not own practices or a director level. And so, I passionately believe that, we need to bring more diversity in, not only to who is giving financial advice or giving money education, but also to who is naturally going to self-select in to learn from those advice professionals as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think looking back at the medical profession, it was a very male-dominated profession. And if you actually look at it today, it's there's more female graduates coming out compared to male graduates.
Interesting. Black law.
Yeah, exactly. And that's sort of balancing the previous gender ratios, I would say.
Yeah, right. Yeah. We are definitely not there yet. And look, sometimes people hear what I say and they think that, I'm attacking men. And I just think it's not about that at all. But what I know, having given advice to hundreds and hundreds of people, and through who comes and joins my money programs, is there's a lot of chatter and a lot of conversation from people saying, oh, I just really wanted a female.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm like, that's interesting, because a lot of the financial advisors that I personally had in my career were not female. I wasn't specifically seeking out a female financial advisor, but you overlay this human component of feeling a lot of embarrassment and shame and guilt about not knowing anything about money. And for some reason, a lot of women in particular feel a lot more reluctant, I think, to front up to someone who is perhaps an older
white man,
for fear of being judged. And so, there's this huge relief factor that many of them have, which I find quite interesting and fascinating. But it tells me, great, well, if I wasn't here, or if other people who didn't look like me or who look like me weren't there, then maybe they would never have lent into money. So, it's something that I'm very, very passionate about.
And I think with the, the demographic changes in our society, as there's more female participation in the workforce, and this, the idea of sort of, not the sole breadwinner man and female homemaker sort of setup anymore. I mean, that's been gone for a number of decades now. The services that we're providing for these female clients has not really kept up with the demographic shifts. Is it?
Yeah, and I also think, from a structural perspective, we have a lot to do to fix the financial structures that were created not with the lives of a lot of women
in the workforce
in mind. And so, yes, there's been all these demographic shifts, and of course, by virtue of the fact that a lot of women are in the workforce and earning an income, and therefore looking at, okay, well, how the hell do I actually maximize this? We then need to overlay the fact that, we have not created systems like superannuation, as an example, with, women in mind.
With a working female in mind, with their career interruptions and all those sort of things.
Absolutely. And of course, I really hope that we move to more of, a parental leave environment where more men are, and we know that, a lot of young men who are having children want to take that time off.
Absolutely.
That's a really exciting green shoot, if you will. But statistically, it is still women who are having time.
And I'll give you an anecdote. Only in recent years in the medical profession were, parental leave actually honored in the same way as maternity leave. I remember back in the days when I was a junior doctor, it was 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And you had no option if your wife delivered early. Tough luck, you've already locked in your paternity leave.
Yes.
We've got no one to cover you.
Yes. And that's still where, obviously in, the environment that you and the listeners work in, it's high pressure, etc. But there are a lot of organizations that still don't have any type of parental leave, be it maternal or paternal leave or parental leave more broadly. And so, I like to talk about the fact that we've come a long way. There's a lot more women who are thinking about investing and buying things like property themselves, which is really exciting to see. But, from an advocacy perspective, I do a lot of work to say, listen, we've still got some legacy structures that have not been fixed yet. So I get on my soapbox, I take it around with me a little bit because I like to talk about that.
No, it's perfect because for a medical group such as Investing for Doctors, that's in a male-dominated sort of previously male-dominated industry, and where we're talking about finances, which is something that most females previously were never really attuned to. We actually have quite a big cohort of females in our group. It's nearly at parity now.
Is it?
Yeah, it's nearly at parity. I think it's about 40. It's between 45 to 50% of
Amazing.
our membership are female, and so that's based on all the preconceived misconceptions about females not caring about numbers and all these sort of things. They actually do care if there's an avenue and a safe space for them to talk about these things and learn as well.
Absolutely. And I think overlaying that with this societal BS, frankly, that we have told women for a really long time that it is unladylike to want to talk about money, or quite shameful to want to earn good money.
Yeah.
And so, breaking those down and saying that's absolutely not true, that's rubbish, throw that in the bin. And look, there's some really, would you call it good research? I mean, there's research from the UK that shows that, this pervades all areas of life. And so this research looked at how the media talks to people about money through a gendered lens. And, articles that were more skewed to a male audience were teaching them how to grow their money and how to, look at the wealth creation sort of strategy side of things. And when you look at it from a female lens, it's much more about how do you save money through coupons and how do you look at your money horoscope,
which
which
that's horrible.
In all of my years of financial advice sort of learnings, I don't know the foggiest thing about money horoscopes. And so, we have to be honest about the fact that, like, for a lot of people, they've internalized these belief systems and they've congregated in this idea that, quote unquote, they're bad with money or they're no good with money. And what I try to teach people is, you've probably just never learned anything about money, because at school in Australia, you're very likely to learn absolutely nothing.
It's a life skill that none of us are taught very well.
Yeah, which is
at all.
Insane.
Yeah.
Because no matter what you do, you are likely to interact with money on a daily basis. And so to have a belief system that is so harmful stay with you for a really long time, decades if you don't fix it, is holding you back, and it's stopping you from having all the things that you really want, which often is security, stability, choice, and freedom. And so what I try to teach people is, hang on, why do you think that? Where does that come from? Is it helping you right now, or is it really derailing you? And could it be that you just never learned anything? And why don't we actually teach you the skills?
And now you're so fearful of getting into it, unless there was something really low barrier to entry or something which is really friendly.
Or quote unquote easy.
Yeah. It's not quite. I mean, none of this stuff is easy, but like it's the ease of access into this.
Totally. But I always say to people, like, we don't do the things that we're meant to do because they feel hard. We all know we need to sleep a lot and eat well and move our bodies and all the things. They don't feel exciting or easy to me. Sometimes they do. Most of the time I'm like, oh God, I've got to do the healthy thing.
Yes.
It can feel challenging. And it's the same with money. Like, you're not going to wake up tomorrow and be like, I suddenly feel like I've created a superpower and I'm really amazing at this. You just eat the elephant one bite at a time. Just start from where you're at, recognize you're on a journey of learning, and just get excited about the idea that you're leveling up and create enormous wealth if you do it well.
Yeah. I like those terminologies, eating the elephant in one bite at a time, leveling up. It's almost very gamified, isn't it? You gotta almost approach finance as a game sometimes. Yeah.
Well, I'm a really challenge oriented person. So if, to the point B, I don't have a dishwasher, thoughts and prayers to me. And so sometimes after I cook, because I live alone, I'm just like, oh God, can I be bothered? And of course I have to be bothered because you can't leave it. And so I have a Google Nest thing next to on my microwave. And so I put on a timer and I'm like, just do 1 minute. How much can you get done in 1 minute? And of course, by the time the timer's gone off, I'm halfway through. It's just the starting that I get really,
It's the inertia.
It's the inertia. And it's exactly the same with the money. It's like, how do we gamify this so you just start? Because getting that momentum sort of wheel to start moving is the hardest bit. But once it does, you'll see how fast the pace of it can move. It gets easier and easier. It's just that beginning bit. So
getting by that initial inertia to do something, because that just seems too hard or too painful or too scary. Even.
Or we tell ourselves really BS excuses, like that we're very good at justifying. Like, if you're looking for any ways to justify why you can't start yet, you'll find fantastic ones. You'll just find them forever. I'm too tired. I'm too busy. I'll just wait. I'll wait until I'm on holidays. I'll wait till I get a pay rise. I'll wait till I get in the next role. We're doing all this waiting. And what I say to people, honestly, is like, if you haven't done it over the last few years, and look, health professionals probably didn't have this problem, but like, people were at home bored out of their mind with nothing to do. I'm like, listen, sunshine, if you didn't do it then, let's be honest. You're not going to wake up on a Sunday morning and go, do you know what I'd like to do today? Review my super. what an exciting Sunday that sounds like. You know, that's just not going to happen. So we have to be honest about the fact that we're like starting now from wherever we're at. We have all these valid, real excuses that we can use, but we don't want to, because time in the money world's an asset. And the longer we wait and delay, A, the more stressed we feel, the more overwhelmed we get, because we've now created this huge, heavy mental load in our brain. And B, we've missed time. We've missed time
in the
which
market.
compounds. And so what I try to teach people is stop giving yourself these excuses, find a way or a style or a person, and keep yourself accountable and just do the first tiny thing.
And I mean, that's some beautiful advice, really.
General advice,
General
but
advice. Yes. So, you know, a lot of the things that we're discussing, or you know, strategies and these things are very sort of general in nature.
Yeah.
And you previously, I mean, you still are a fully accredited financial advisor. How did it feel to give up that personal advice component to go on and teach people about, you know, under the general advice sort of domain?
It was a mixed bag of emotions, if I'm truly honest. And look, it was born out of a few different things. Firstly, I also feel like I can't whinge about the hours that I worked when I'm talking to people who work in the medical profession. So I just need to check myself.
Everyone has a different baseline. You know, some people will say, I don't want to work more than 30 hours a week. And we have doctors like that. We have doctors that work 3 days a week. And
listen, I worked at Macquarie Bank. They're notorious for working you hard. I thought I knew what hard work was. I started my own business and I was like, lol, I had no idea what hard work was. And so, you know, I knew the first 12 months in small business land were going to be a slog. And so my business partner and I, who was also ex-Macquarie, we were like 12 months of like running with as much tenacity as we got, was sprinting for 12 months. And so my first client meeting would be at 7 a.m. My last client meeting of the day would finish at 8 p.m. I'd see clients back to back all day.
Wow.
When you get out of an advice conversation, there are file notes, there's strategy, you know, there's a lot of work you got to do after that. And then I'd see clients on a Saturday, predominantly couples. And then, you know, Saturday afternoon was checking strategies, making amendments. Sunday was probably doing emails or doing the same. And then, God forbid, doing my groceries or trying to put some things in the washing. And so we got to that 12-month mark and I was tired. And my business partner was like, 12 more months. And I was like, I don't know if I've got 12 more months in me. And we did it for 12 more months. Literally, the cleaner said to me, B, do you go home? And I said, I don't even know why I bother going home. Like, I should just camp out here on my office floor. And so, you know, I was working really hard and I was really lucky. I had a wait list of scores of people who sometimes waited weeks or months to have an initial consult with me, which I felt enormously guilty about, because then I would turn half of them away because they just could not.
And they're not there yet to where, you know, you mentioned earlier that some people are not there enough to pay that big fee, or they're not complicated enough where you can really make that much of a difference, and you wanted it something scaled down
totally
to give them.
And it felt awful to make these people wait and then to say to them, hey, I'm so proud of you for saving this amount, but I can't take this, you know, a ginormous chunk of what you've saved. I ethically can't do it. And then they'd be like, okay, thank you for being honest. Where will I go? What do I do? And I'd be like, maybe go and read like the Barefoot Investor, or I don't know, get on ASIC Money Smart website. They've got some cool calculators and tools.
That's hard.
And people would be like, I already have read the Barefoot Investor. And I'm like, great. I have no idea where to send you.
What? Yeah.
Now what? Now where? And it used to lay awake at night and I could just see with all the regulatory change and all the increasing, like we had to lift our fees by 50% for our sort of first program. And I cried. I cried because I knew we had to do it from a profitability perspective, but I also knew I kind of was going against my personal values. And the whole reason why I started the business was to try to help people who were not going and seeking out advice, and I was locking them out. And so, you know, that was a really hard call for me. And it was one that my business partner and I had a lot of chats about. But when I'd made the decision, no, I need to go and leave and I need to, you know, figure out how I can at least play a role in solving this problem, you know, then I had to tell these people who I had really intimate, you know, very deep relationships with that I was no longer going to be their advisor. And, you know, many of them cried and cried and cried, which was really hard to see. I had many of them do my greenhouse program when I first launched it last year. And I was like, why have you joined this? I've already given you advice. You know what to do. They're like, yeah, I want to refresh and I want to learn how to fish myself. So, you know, from an interpersonal perspective, it was hard. But from an energetic perspective, like what I love to do is the education component, and knowing that I have now the capacity to do that at scale. Because when you're running that service-based business, there's a natural cap.
Yeah, which is your time.
And we are so regulated and we live in such a compliant environment. You have to be so careful about absolutely everything. We're talking 100, 120 page documents. You make one mistake, you don't get your calcs right in one piece of it. Not only does it flow through to the rest of it, but like the regulator is on your back. And I didn't want that. I didn't want, to live in an environment where I was constantly so busy that I would be worried that, like, what if I've made a mistake? Because I'm trying to help everyone. Because I was taking on clients when I was full because I really wanted to help them.
To be honest, what you're describing sounds very much like some of the medical profession.
Yeah.
Like I could completely empathize with that, because like sometimes we work ourselves too much because we need to fit that extra patient in. We need to do something else for someone else, and a lot of the time that's at our own personal cost.
Totally.
Or financial cost or personal cost or emotional cost. And there are obviously patients that we can't help because, look, you can't pay the fee. I can't do anything for you. You don't have what is needed.
You are so right. And don't you think there's a beautiful irony in that? Because I feel like it would be the same. One of the things that really struck me was I was like, God, I took a holiday. I went to Germany. And of course, when I went to Germany is when we had our first claim from a client. It would only be when I went on holidays. And so, I was really excited. I'd worked so hard. I was like, I'm having Christmas, a white Christmas in Germany. I'm going to switch off for a few weeks. And I just couldn't because, it was a pretty sad situation what happened. And, I was like, God, I'm spending my whole life planning other people's lives at the detriment of actually having one. And, similarly, I'm so sure that there are medical professionals who are doing such a great job of helping all of their clients get healthy at the detriment of their own health. And so at some point I needed to step back and say, how do I build the life that I want to live? How do I impact the most amount of people? How can I change the narrative that talking about money is really healthy and wanting to build wealth is not an ick, and it's not something you should ever feel ashamed of. It should not be a taboo. Yeah. How do I make money fun? How do I engage more people? How do I make this exciting and realize, get people to realize you are more capable than you ever have told yourself you are with money? And it doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be stuffy. You don't have to think that you need to be able to quote unquote get numbers to get it. And for me, that has meant phenomenal opportunity. I mean, the ability to come here on a weekday and do this recording. I would never have been able to do that in the past. Yeah. And so, it's been a really great journey. And it's what's wonderful, B, is, my sort of more structured program is 10 weeks. I have people turn up to the first live call on the first Monday, genuinely terrified, very open about the fact that they are bad at money, no good at this. I've got doctors in my current program who are, telling me on the community forums, I'm just really silly in this area. I don't get it. And I'm like, listen, stop. You're very smart. Clearly you're smart. You're a doctor. By week 10, the level of transformation, do they know everything? Of course they don't. You can't do it everything in 10 weeks. But watching that transformation and watching the confidence increase over what is a relatively short space of time, I cannot tell you how much that lights me up. It's so exciting. And I just think, to the point before, God, don't we all wish we learned this at school?
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like something that should be part of every high school curriculum.
Correct.
Maybe not some of the advanced stuff, but just even things about taxes, about deductions, and how you save and how you invest.
Budgeting.
Yeah. Oh, budgeting. Yeah, of course, that's a.
What is compounding? Yeah. All tax. To your point, people have no idea how tax works still. So I just think we have to be honest about the fact that the system does not teach what is a vital life skill, and therefore everyone who interacts with money needs to go and create that capability within their life. You have to go and find the skills. You have to go and learn them. And, you can't outsource all of it. Yeah, you can go and get a financial advisor. They can implement some of that for you. But ultimately, you still need to know what you're signing off on. It's your money. Yeah. And so what I say to people is, if we look at the wellness sort of Venn diagram, we must now put financial well-being or financial wellness firmly in that diagram.
Absolutely.
And you have to carve out time to get good at it.
And I think if you I'm not going to quote the statistics. If you looked at the stats on sort of family discord, outside of, interpersonal stuff, finance is actually one of the biggest reasons why people break up.
Yeah.
And not just within a marriage or a couple relationship, but also intergenerationally. And often, sometimes it's just very unrealistic expectations. Or sometimes they're just very bad at it, and they could have been a lot better in a much better financial situation, but because they've not done the basic things they needed to do to ensure their financial well-being into the future, they end up running into problems later on, and that becomes too hard to solve because you're now 50 and you don't know what you don't know, and trying to reverse all of that sort of things, it becomes very, very hard.
Yeah, you're never too late though.
Yeah.
It's never too late. But, I think I did some research last year, and something like 1/3 of respondents said that they were fighting with their partner on a monthly basis about money. It is one of the leading reasons of relationship breakdowns that was cited. And we think about all of the macroeconomic pressures that are, really affecting almost everyone in, Australia at the moment. And so you can imagine the majority of people do not want to have conversations with their partner about money. Why? Because if you look at historically, where do we have conversations with our partner about money? In times of conflict.
Yeah.
Why did you spend this money?
Oh, yeah.
Why did you buy this thing? Why is the, postman delivering more online stuff again? What have you been, there's this value misalignment.
Yeah.
We're not on the same page. We don't have financial goals together that we've actually sat down and worked towards.
Exactly. So there's that brings me back to one thing I read. The one great thing about the Barefoot Investor is that he talks about having these date nights where as a couple you sit down, you talk about where you want to be financially, and so you're on the same page. I find that a lot of people in there, even between couples, they don't know where they are, and sometimes even individually they don't know where they are. And so how can you communicate that with your partner if you yourself don't even know where you are?
B, what fascinates me, and I do a whole week on this in my program, is that people have no idea what drives them, and they have no idea what they want to do with their life. They may have sorted out in a career sense.
Yep.
That was really common. I used to see that a lot. Like they had their, professional pathways all mapped out. And then I'm like, great, but what do you want to do with your life? Blank stares.
Yeah.
And so I say to people, we're planning holidays and meals more than we're planning our life. Isn't that insane? You go to work every day. You trade off your time that you can never get back for money. What do you want to do beyond paying the bills with that money? And outside of work, take your scrubs off. Who are you? What do you love? What do you not enjoy doing? And how do we make sure that whatever goals you're building are actually aligned to your values and not this keeping up with the Joneses BS that now lives not only on our street, but inside our screens, which come to bed with us at night. Like we're constantly being bombarded and told what we must aspire to have. And it's like, well, that's rubbish. You don't need to do that. What do you like? What drives you? Where do you want to go in life? And then for goodness sake, if you've got a partner, it's very important that you find out
what they want as well.
what their answers are.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes that's not communicated, and you have children, and then you get to a stage where, oh, this is not the life I wanted.
Yeah.
And then you're like, you feel trapped.
Yeah.
And that gets very, very dark and very scary.
Yeah.
For a lot.
And when I was giving advice, I honestly was like, oh my God, I am somehow an unqualified accidental marriage therapist, a marriage counselor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm not trained in this. I'm trained in numbers. And so for me, I was like, oh my God, I have to do much more coaching. I have to do much more mediation. There were some ugly conversations in my office sometimes.
Wow.
And I'm like, listen, are we not on the same team? Are we not all on the same team? Like we don't need to I went and did acceptance and commitment therapy training.
Oh, yes.
ACT training, because I was like, I have absolutely no idea how to help people, commit to new behavioral patterns and thought patterns, but also how am I going to navigate? And I did a lot. I'm fascinated by the brain through books only. Yes. And so I looked at a lot of neuroscience and I was like, how do I bring this into money? Yeah. How do I take all these brain hacks around how do we coach people and how do we motivate people and gamify situations? And how do I help people figure out who they are and figure out what they want, and then we can have date nights. Because money date nights sound, I think, probably boring and terrifying to most people, but I think they sound really hard if you haven't done some of the foundational stuff first.
Yes, that's right. So as I said, if you don't know even what you have, what you own, it's very hard to talk about it with someone else when you're trying to convey unknown to another unknown, right? It's just terrifying.
But when you can get into a cadence where it just becomes, really, I like to teach people, because I have like a booklet and helping people how to do it. It needs to be fun. We think of money and we think it's so boring. And if you think of money and you think it's so boring, I want you to really reframe that and think about what money affords you or could afford you. Because a lot of people say, yeah, but I'm not really money driven. And I say to them, join the club. Me neither. I'm actually not very money driven at all, which is hilarious if you think about what I do. But I'm very driven by security and stability. And I'm very driven by challenge.
Yeah.
For me personally, they are two fantastic values to really lean into when it comes to setting up my own personal financial, strategy, because I'm always, I have to override sometimes my natural bias towards stability and security and push myself out of my comfort zone to make sure I'm taking the right level of risk, particularly with long-term investments. But simultaneously, I'm really challenge oriented. And so, if I want something, I'll just figure out, okay, how do I gamify this so that I can really chart my course and measure my progress to be able to get it. And so I think knowing who you are, A, helps you make sure that your goals are really aligned to that. But B, it helps you figure out how can you lean into that to set up your strategy and stay on track with your strategy. Like, use them to your advantage, because most people are driven by things like this.
I mean, what you're describing sounds very much like not just a financial coach, but almost a life coach in a way, to get people to think about all these other things outside of money, because money ends up being a tool for the rest of their life, and it's a form of sustenance for them, and also maybe a tool to advance whatever their dreams and aspirations are, isn't it?
Totally.
And yeah.
I have a bit of an issue, I just get worried about these people who are quote unquote life coaches. But, what I say to people is like, show me your bank statement and I'll tell you what I think is going on in your world. And people are terrified. Like, you can imagine people are automatically trying to find the door or the emergency exit so they can run as far away from me as humanly possible. But it's so true. I can look at people's bank statements and I'm like, hey, something's really wrong here. Because we spend when we're emotional, men and women. The stats are there. We spend when we're emotional or angry or upset. And so, sometimes I've had to have conversations with clients where I'm like, hey, money is just the vehicle that you're sort of using or funneling this through. You got some big things that are going on right now that we need to go and get you some professional help with outside of financial advice. And so people use money as a Band-Aid. People use money as, a very big self-worth ego piece.
Yeah.
And often they are really desperately unhappy. They buy the nice car. They buy the home in the postcode that everyone else wants to live in. They send their kid to that fancy school. They've ticked all the things that are meant to make them happy.
But they're still not.
So why are they not feeling it?
I think it comes back down to this concept of knowing yourself and who you are and what drives you and what makes you happy.
Totally.
I think in that model you just described, they would have copied that model from somewhere else or somebody else, because those are the things to aspire for, right? In life. And when you try and copy and paste someone else's life goals or what is perceived to be a successful or happy life, you sort of neglect yourself and who you are in that process. And then, you might be 20 years into it and you look back in your life and it's like, I've got all these things. There's no reason for me to be unhappy, but why am I unhappy? And then that opens up such a huge can of worms when you actually start doing that self-introspection.
And it's hard.
Yeah.
That's self-introspection. I heard this. I haven't fact-checked this, so perhaps I shouldn't say things that I haven't fact-checked. But I heard this stat, maybe you've heard it, that people would rather get an electric shock than be with their own thoughts for 15 minutes.
I think there is that psychological experiment.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah, because it's a stimulation. It's a lack of that stimulation. And what happens now in the information age of social media, you're always bombarded by something.
Yeah.
And it becomes horrendously uncomfortable to just sit there and do nothing.
And be
lost in your own, and be in the present, or lost in your own thoughts.
Yeah. So is it no wonder that people don't know who they are or what they value or what they want to aspire to, because they've literally given themselves no time to ponder on it. And what I'd actually find when I was doing one-on-one advice, we used to do something called a goals and values session, which is a 90-minute session. I've basically pulled that exact session out and put it into my program. But the first session, their goals were crap.
Yeah.
Honestly, cookie cut, I could basically write it for them.
Yeah.
I'd be like, how about I just guess them for, I didn't do this, but like I could have, because 90% of them would turn out the same. But you could almost sense that they were looking at them going, yeah, I think that's what I want. And then as I worked with them over time, they got panel beated, and they got some got thrown on the cutting room floor, and they got much more creative and wild in a lot of instances. Because, I work, to get a financial advisor, you need a certain level of income. So, I worked with really predominantly white collar professional young people. These were people earning good money, working really hard. And, they'd been told quite a linear sort of success path.
A linear journey.
Yeah. And then watching them, they must have gone away at night and just started to ponder on it, because they'd come back and they'd be like, hey, I've done some thinking. In 5 years, I want to spend a year in Africa. Or I'm ready to write the book. I had a couple who were like, we don't want to have kids. We want to sail. We want to get enough money so we can sail around the world indefinitely. They were sailors.
Wow.
In their spare time. That was not necessarily how people would come to me, but clearly through a process where I asked them some challenging questions that they had to sit with, there was this beautiful evolution and transformation in them actually recognizing or starting to think beyond the busy day-to-day. What am I working towards?
It's that discovery process.
Yeah.
And I dare say a lot of people have not done that. And so that's why they're in such a stuck situation, I guess.
That's sad.
Yeah, it is sad. But I mean, there is hope, because once you can identify the problem, you can do something about it. And I remember I actually have a coach that I go and see. And I remember in one of the very first sessions, she gave me a deck of cards. And it's a deck of value cards.
Oh, yes. So did my coach. I have a coach who did the same thing.
And they basically say, okay, from this deck of cards, say pick 20 items that you care about. You go. And then you got 20, and you're like really proud because you selected 20 items.
I think I know where this is going.
Yeah. And then it's like, now get rid of 10 of them.
Yeah. I make them pick 5.
And then, and then narrow down to 5, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, that's just the most wrenching process that you have to go through. But you have to be honest with yourself.
It helps you then to start sort of triaging, if you will, which of these are the most important to me, which are the highest priority, which are the lowest priority. And of course, when you got 20, you're like, yeah, I love them all.
Yeah.
But when you're being forced to give up half of them, you're like, oh, hang on, I need to do some deeper thinking here. It's a really clever exercise. And yes, I do use that.
It's a very, very clever exercise, because that loss aversion, right? That loss aversion, even just giving up a card when there is like no stakes in at all.
None.
But that was such a thought-provoking process. And it was like, which one am I going to sacrifice, right? And it's just like, it makes you better at understanding yourself, I think.
You know what I find funny about that? So I have a weekly goals coach for me, which I've had for 7 years. And I that's why I was a bit scared when you called me a life coach, because I was like, oh, what she does with me is very different to what I do. But I do acknowledge that probably compared to how a lot of financial advisors really run their service model. Yes, I do a lot more human.
You're not a typical financial advisor.
No. What did you call me, an oddball? This oddball over here does things quite different. So what I like to do is, we have a text thing that I use. Every year I go back and I look at my values. And over the 7 years, none have changed. I don't think any have changed. Maybe 1 or 2. But what I notice for some of the people that come and do my programs is often there's a trigger event to learning about money, which is so annoying, because the last thing you want when you're dealing with some sort of big trigger event and all the emotional fallout is to then have to start learning about money. Like, if you're being logical, you would never put those two things together at the same time. And so sometimes values exercises are quite interesting because they're very point in time. Someone might be craving stability or security because maybe their partner just died or they've just gone through a divorce or something big has happened. And then you look at it a few years later and that's actually not a driver for them anymore. Or maybe it's that they didn't have any financial stability when they walked in to work with me. But because they've then been able to build emergency savings or pay down the, bad debt or whatever they've been able to do, that has sort of quietened in terms of the priority list. So I think it's also interesting to sort of see how we, at different points in our life, sort of really gravitate towards different values as well. So I'd encourage people to, if you've done it before, don't think, oh, well, I've done that next. Like, go back and check it and sort of stress test it as well.
Yeah, it's about knowing who you are. And there is a saying from The Art of War, which a lot of people study. One of the, the classical one that everyone hears about is that you got to know yourself, you got to know the enemy. And then you win every battle. And if you didn't, at your own peril.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I think that's one has to know themselves before they can really, really get in on the game. Yeah.
And even, sometimes, and I used to work with all sorts of people in a one-on-one sense. I had investment bankers as clients. I've had the whole gamut. Some of them were like, oh God, what is this woo-woo crap? I'm like, listen, we're not manifesting things over here. This is not woo-woo crap. I can't build you an investment strategy until I know what the hell you want to do.
Yeah.
And I need you to have conviction in why you want to do the thing, which is aligned to your values. Because I need to know when markets go down, you are not going to panic and sell because you don't have a good anchor here.
Yeah.
Don't think that this is all kind of cutesy stuff. I need to make damn sure that if I'm putting your money into markets for long-term investing and we're taking a significant amount of risk because you're young and you've decided you're like there on the risk profile, make no mistake about it, this is very, very important, because how on earth someone writes an investment strategy for someone when they don't have a clear goal
of who that person is,
or who that I actually can't figure it out. Yeah. So when I launched the business in 2017, or when we launched the business, we won all these awards. We got all this media coverage. People were fascinated that we're doing coaching-based advice, and people were fascinated that I did cash flow advice. And I was like, but I don't understand. I don't understand how you can give advice without understanding someone's budget properly or their goals, or be able to have a conversation with them where you're like, hey, you told me you want to do this goal. What the hell are you doing? You're spending like a mad person. Either I'm pushing the goal out, or or we'll throw it out if you don't like it, fine. Or we are remediating this.
Yeah, almost feels like we've gone all the way to the deep end and forgotten all about our basics.
Yeah.
And you expect people to sort of sink or swim in that sort of lower tier before you get, oh, I've made it, now I can actually get a financial advisor to plan my life. But in the meantime, all these other people have just like not had access to anything, really, apart from some websites.
I think like the foundational stuff is so wildly overlooked. And I think also because financial professionals want to talk about the sexy investing stuff. Yeah, we like to, bamboozle people with our jargon and our, complicated strategies to show you how smart we are. And I'm like, that comes later. Only when we've built, it's like building a house and not putting a foundation on the floor.
Yeah.
Great. The wind blows. That's coming in, my friend. Like, I'm not an architect or an engineer, but I'm pretty sure you need a foundation. And the foundation takes a long, if you've ever built a house, and I haven't, but I've watched enough Grand Designs that I feel like I know what I'm talking about. It's slow and hard and expensive.
Yes.
But only when the foundation is set, then we can start doing all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Then the investing stuff and the strategies can come into place. Do not miss that step, because very quickly when in investment markets or things happen in your life and that wind blows, that deck of cards will tumble. And sadly, most people learn that the hard way.
Yeah, that's very wise advice. And now, thank you for sharing all of these things about what you do as a general advisor. I'm not going to call you a coach, but I find that you are coaching people through based on our conversation.
Yes.
And I'm sure that's something a lot of us doctors would love to experience as well. So check out the link below, and hopefully we'll be able to do this similar for you.
Thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. The information and opinions shared are not intended as personal financial advice. The content presented should not be relied upon for making financial, investment, or other decisions. Listeners are strongly encouraged to seek the advice of qualified financial or legal professionals before making any financial decisions. While we aim to provide valuable and accurate information, we make no guarantees regarding the completeness or accuracy of the content. Any reliance on the information provided is done at your own risk.